To IXL 8th grade V6. Go to Learning. Make sure you're on Math. Go down to 8th grade. And then down to V6. Evaluate multivariable expressions. Right? Before we do this, let's just go to Frydman Math and look at the reference pages quickly. I'm going to look at negatives, which is on page 5. So let's scroll down to page 5. Here it is, page 5. I'm not going to read every single thing. Just remember to evaluate expressions where you're adding or subtracting numbers. For example, if you have -5 minus 3, you would put your finger or your pencil on a number line on wherever the first number is. So the first number is -5. I would put my cursor here on -5. And then if I'm subtracting, I would move to the left. And if I'm adding, I would move to the right. So in this example, I'm subtracting 3. So I started at -5, and then I'm going to subtract 3 by moving 3 spaces to the left. 1, 2, 3. So my answer would be -8. So remember, if you're subtracting, go to the left. If you're adding, go to the right. Rewriting rules. If you see a minus negative right next to each other, you can turn that into a plus. If you see a plus negative right next to each other, you can turn that into a minus. For adding and subtracting, first of all, use these rules after rewriting. So if there's something to rewrite, rewrite first, and then use these rules. Same symbols, add and keep the symbol. So here you see that I have the same symbol, even though this is technically a negative over here, and this is a subtraction over here. It's the same symbol that's being used. Both of them are, we represent them with dashes. So the rule is, if you see the same symbol, then you should add the absolute values. So not -5, but just add 5 and 3, and you would get 8 here, and keep the symbol. So the symbol here was a dash, or we'll say a negative. So the answer would be -8. And that just follows from what you would find on the number line. So if you're not sure about the rules to use here, then just draw a number line and work it out that way. You could also use this circle strategy down here. I'm not going to read this entire thing, but you can read it yourself. Different symbols, we subtract and take the symbol of the larger number. That means by the larger number, I mean the number with the greater absolute value. So for example, if we're doing -5 plus 3, so these are different symbols. So this is a dash and this is a plus sign, right? So they're different. So we would subtract the absolute value. So we're going to do 5 minus 3, which is 2, and we take the symbol of the larger number, meaning the larger absolute value. So we're comparing 5 and 3. Well, 5 is bigger. We're ignoring the negative here, and we're just comparing 5 and 3. So 5 is bigger than 3, so we would take the symbol that's in front of that 5, which in this case is a negative, and put that here. So the answer there would be -2. And if we are multiplying or dividing with negatives, multiplying or dividing 2 negatives results in a positive. Okay, so -20 times -4, for example, would be equal to +80. You don't always have to write the positive symbol in front. Usually it's not written, actually, but sometimes it is when the author, in this case me, wants to make it clear that this is a +80 as opposed to a -80. But really, if it doesn't have a negative sign in front of it, then it would be positive. Moving down to here, multiplying or dividing one positive and one negative results in a negative. So for example, this is a positive times a negative, which is negative. Negative times a positive, again, is negative. So if one is positive and the other is negative, and you're multiplying or dividing, then the result would be negative. You can see these division examples also. It's the same rule. Okay, so that's all I'm going to read from this reference page right now. I think that's all we'll need for this skill. So let's go back. That's the wrong one. Let's go back over here. Evaluate the expression for s equals 8 and t equals 4. So that means all we have to do is, let me write the expression again. That was s minus t. So s minus t. I'm just going to write it over here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in 8 for s and 4 for t. And I'm going to keep the subtraction symbol here. Then all I have to do is 8 minus 4, which is 4. Right? So I didn't even have to use anything from the reference page there. That's really just a simple elementary school, even kindergarten problem, 8 minus 4. Right? The only thing that a kindergartner might not be able to do is plug in. But everything else, doing 8 minus 4, that's pretty easy. So the answer there is 4. Evaluate the expression for w equals 10 and x equals 3. So we have over here w minus x. I'm just going to write it over here. W minus x. So w is 10 and x is 3. So we have 10 minus 3, which is 7. Again, an easy problem over there. Keep in mind, what if we had it this way? What if we had 3 minus 10? What would that be? That would be a negative 7, right? Because over here, if I do a number line over here, if this is 10 and then I go 1, 2, 3 spaces to the left, that would put me on 7. On the other hand, if I started at 3 and then I went 10 spaces to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that would put me at negative 7. So you will have to be careful there, okay? But anyway, this one was 10 minus 3, so that's a positive 7. So we'll just type that in. Okay, now here we see that the R and the S are right next to each other. That means we are multiplying them. So we have to do, just plug in, R in this case is 2, S is 6, so you could write a multiplication symbol there. Remember, if they're right next to each other, there's no addition symbol in between, there's no subtraction symbol in between, then we are multiplying them together. So 2 times 6 is 12. Both of these numbers are positive, so there are no tricks yet with positives and negatives. The answer there is 12. All right, I think I'm going to skip to the next level. Let's see if it gives us some harder ones here. Okay, so here's a tougher one. D minus F. Let me just write this over here. D minus F. Well, D is negative 3, so we'll plug in a negative 3. And then don't forget to put the minus sign down here. And then F is negative 6, so we have negative 6 over here. Okay, a lot of students will forget to put this minus sign here, and they'll get this minus sign confused with this negative over here, and they'll just write negative 3 minus 6 instead of writing negative 3 minus negative 6. So that's important. Now let's follow the rules. So we have a minus negative, right? So we're going to turn that into a plus. Let me just get rid of this. That's annoying. So we will turn this over here into a plus sign. And then we have, go back to pink, negative 3 plus 6. All right, now how should we do negative 3 plus 6? Well, we could, we'll do it a couple of different ways. We have here different symbols, right? So what we need to do is we need to subtract and keep the symbol of the larger number. So over here, we are going to subtract. Always put the bigger number on top. So 6 minus 3 is 3. Now, what's bigger, 6 or 3? Let's just ignore the negative for a second. What's bigger, 6 or 3? Well, 6 is bigger. And the 6 had that plus sign, which, even though it's a plus sign, we can treat it as a positive. Just think of it as a positive here. And we can say that our answer should be a positive 3. Let me put this back over here. I just want to know 6 is bigger than 3. If this number had been bigger, then we would have put a negative in front of the answer. But since this number is bigger, we'll put a positive sign in front of the answer. Okay, so our answer is positive 3, and all we have to type into IXL is 3. And actually, let me do that another way also. We could also have written a number line. So starting at negative 3, we count 6 spaces to the right because we are adding. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would land us at positive 3, right? If we write everything in here, -1, -2, -3, 1, 2, 3. So our answer would be positive 3 there. That's another way we could have solved it. Okay, next question. Evaluate the expression df when d is equal to -1 and f is equal to 6. So here we go. df, we're going to plug in -1 here. We're going to plug in 6 over here. Now there was no plus sign or negative sign over there, so we are going to multiply these numbers. Okay, now if we're multiplying numbers, we have to look at the rules for multiplying and dividing. Remember, if one of them is positive and one of them is negative, then our answer will be negative. If they're both negative, then the answer will be positive. So here I have one negative and one positive, so the answer will be negative. And 1 times 6 is 6, so my answer is going to be -6. Okay. Next question. We have CD plus C. Let me just write it over here. CD plus C. So C is -4. So everywhere that I see a C, I need to put in -4. There's a C over here, and there's a C over here. So we're going to put a -4 into both of them. And the D is -1. So we'll put a -1 over here. These things are getting multiplied together. Okay, and then we're adding. So we need to remember our order of operations. So multiplication, well, actually, let me just make this look a little bit neater. We can start by rewriting. So we have a plus negative, so that's going to turn into minus. So over here, this plus negative is going to turn into minus. So let's rewrite everything else. We have -4 times -1 minus 4. Okay, so now we have two operations here. We have multiplication and we have subtraction. Well, using our order of operations, multiplication comes before subtraction. Let me just remind everybody of PEMDAS. Which stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So multiplication and division come before addition and subtraction. All right. And even though when you write PEMDAS, the M comes before the D, actually, when you're evaluating the expressions, if you see division first, you should do division first. If you see multiplication first, you should do multiplication first. So both of these things, the M and the D, you really do just from left to right, whichever one comes first. And the same thing with addition and subtraction. If you have already done the multiplication and division and you're on the addition and subtraction step, then you just do that from left to right. But anyway, we don't have to worry about that here. We have multiplication and we have subtraction. So we'll do the multiplication first. So let's remember the rules. If we have two negatives and we're multiplying them together, the answer is positive. So back here, we had a negative times a negative, so that would be positive. So we'll write positive, and 4 times 1 is 4. So I'm going to write positive 4, and then I still have this minus over here, minus 4. And of course, 4 minus 4 is 0, so that would be my answer there. Okay, P plus Q. Let's do this one, and then after this one, I think I'll move to the next level. So P plus Q, we're going to plug in -5 for P. We're going to plug in -1 for Q. And we have this plus sign here. Plus negative is going to turn into minus. So we have -5 minus 1. And now look at what we have here. We have same symbols, right? Look over here. Same symbols. Remember, you use these rules when you're adding or subtracting, these same symbols, different symbols rules. I'm not going to use these rules because these rules I only use when I'm multiplying or dividing. I'm not multiplying or dividing here. Okay, so I'll use these rules where I have the same symbols. I should add and keep the symbol. So we have -5 minus 1. We will add just 5 plus 1. We're just adding the absolute values, which means when we do this calculation over here, we're ignoring all the negatives and just, treating all the numbers as positives. So we'll do 5 plus 1, which is 6, and we're going to keep the symbol. So that would be a -6. All right. This problem is like the problem we did a couple questions ago. So I'm going to skip to the next level, see if I get something different. Oh, here we go. So we have some exponents over here. That's nice. So let me just write this over here. I have PQ squared, or Q to the second power, R. So let's plug in everything. P is -6. Q is -1. These things, remember, there's no plus or minus sign between them. So that means they're getting multiplied together. So I'm just going to write times, and then I'll put -1. I'm going to put that in parentheses because I just think it looks better when it has an exponent of 2 above it. So we have to keep that exponent over there. And then r is -6. And again, I'm going to have to, there's no plus or minus sign here, so I'm going to have to write times -6. Okay, let me just mention, a lot of students over here, when they see something like this, will try to rewrite it. Don't rewrite this. So for example, a lot of students will circle this and write something like division, right? But this is absolutely wrong. Wrong. No. Absolutely wrong. Do not do that. The rewriting rules are only for addition and subtraction. We're only turning minus negative into plus and plus negative into minus. We do not use the rewriting rules when we're multiplying or dividing. Okay, so let's get rid of that then. Okay, let's just follow our order of operations. So we have -1. We'll do exponents first. -1 to the second power means -1 times -1, which is equal to +1, right? Because a negative times a negative is equal to positive. So that means that down here, we can write +1. So now we have -6 times +1 times -6. So now let's go ahead and do that. -6 times 1. A negative times a positive is negative. So we'll put a -6 over here because 6 times 1 is 6. And then we still have this times -6. Now we have a negative times a negative. Remember, I'm using the multiplication and division rules now. A negative times a negative is a positive. So we'll write +36. You can put the plus sign, I should say really positive sign, because the context matters. I don't mean addition by 36. I mean a positive 36. But a lot of people, unfortunately, including myself, sometimes when we're speaking, say plus when we should say positive. And anyway, this is a positive 36. So you don't have to write the positive sign in IXL. You can just write 36. Okay, so we'll do another one with exponents. M squared n plus n. So m is -2, so I'll put a -2 over here, and do not forget to raise that to the second power. And we're going to multiply that by 6 because n is equal to 6. Plus, we have another 6, okay? So wherever you see an n, you should be plugging in 6. We have two n's here, so we're going to plug in two 6's. If there were 8 trillion n's, then we would plug in 8 trillion 6's. It doesn't matter how many you have. Just everywhere you see an n, at least for this problem, you're going to plug in a 6. All right, so -2 squared. Let's do that on the side over here. That means -2 times -2, which is equal to +4. So we'll write 4, and then we have times 6 plus 6. So we're going to do multiplication before we do addition. That's just following the order of operations. So 4 times 6 is 24, and then we still have this plus 6, and that's just an elementary school problem. We're not getting tricked with negatives here. It's just 24 plus 6, which is 30. Okay, so let's put that in. For this one, you would just multiply all of these things together. Okay, so 4 times -4 would be -16, and -16 times 2 would be, we have a negative times a positive, -16 times 2 would be -32. So let's do that. I just want to see if, okay, it's giving me the same types of problems, so I'm going to jump to the next level. Well, I'm up to the challenge, though. Am I ready? I don't know. Okay, so these seem to be, again, the same type of problems, just with decimals. So I'm going to do this one. If I get the same kind of a problem for the next one, then I'm just going to end the video there. So we have P, Q plus R. I'm just writing this on the side here. P is 12. These are right next to each other, so we're going to multiply by Q, which is 3.7. And we're going to add R, which is 1.1. Okay. Feel free to use a calculator here. I'm going to use a calculator and just do 12 times 3.7 is 44.4. Oops. Plus 1.1. This I'm not going to use a calculator for. This, I think it's more instructional to do it on the side here, because actually this should be easy, but still a lot of students will make a careless mistake and forget to line up the decimals. Remember, you have to line up these decimals over here. So this would be plus 1, because of this plus sign, plus 1.1, just like that. Notice how the decimals are lined up here. So 4 plus 1 is 5, 4 plus 1 is 5, and 4 plus nothing is 4. So we're going to get 45.5. And then we're done. Is this different? Not really. Okay, so I'm going to end the video there. Reach out to me if you have any questions, and have a great day.